Okay, so today we are making this cute acorn quilt block. This is a 9-inch block, and it's just got this scrappy little 9 patch for the body of it, with the cap and a little stem. So to get started, let's grab our fabric pieces that we will need. So we will need 2 strips of white fabric that are 1.5 by 4.5. And then for the little stem, we need a piece 1.5 by 1.5. Now for our cap of the acorn right here, we're going to need a strip of fabric that's 2.5 by 9.5. And then to get these little angled pieces, we have 2 squares of white fabric, and these are 2.5 by 2.5. For the body of the acorn, we're going to need some 2.5-inch squares. There are 7 of these, and they're just in scrappy fall brown colors. And then lastly, for our half square triangles, we're going to need a square of white and a square of brown, and these are 3 inches wide, or 3 inches square. And then in addition to that, we will need 2 strips of fabric that are 2 by 6.5, and that's for the sides right here. So let's get started. First of all, let's make our half square triangles. So to do that, we're going to grab our white piece of fabric, and then this is how I like to do it. I take a quilting ruler, and then along the edge there is these markings. There's almost always one, a 1/4 inch marking. I just line up that line from corner to corner on the square. Then I draw a line on the edge of the ruler. That gives me a line 1/4 inch away from the center. Then I'll just flip it around and do the same thing. And then we'll go over to the sewing machine and we'll sew. So before we do that though, we need to grab our bottom piece. This is our 3-inch square in brown, and then we'll put our white 3-inch square right on top, and then we'll sew along these lines that we just drew. Okay, so we've sewn along the lines of our square here. Now we're just going to slice right down the middle from corner to corner between those 2 lines that we sewed. Then we'll have our 2 half square triangles. Now we're going to trim these up so they are exactly 2.5 inches. They're pretty close, but they're just a little bit off, and we want our pieces to come together nicely. So we're going to trim those up to 2.5-inch squares. So let me show you what I just did with this other one. So I have this ruler. There are different markings. So if I line up the seam that I sewed along this 2.5-inch line, and then trim around the outside, that will give me a perfect 2.5-inch square. Okay, and then we'll just grab our ironing mat here and we'll press these open. The last thing we need to do is we will just trim these little tails off, and then we will have our 2.5-inch half square triangles. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to lay out our 9 patch. We're going to make the body of our acorn. So I just have all these scrappy fabrics, and I'm just going to arrange them in a way that I like. Now I've made a few extra half square triangles because I kind of want them to be different. You don't have to, it's totally fine to leave them the same, but let me just grab a different one. Maybe this one, just so it's not the same. Okay, maybe like that. I'm just trying to get where I have some fabrics that are a little bit lighter, just kind of separate those, and also some of the leaves so they're not right next to each other, some of the patterns that are similar. But just however you want to arrange them, that's fine. So then next we will go over to the sewing machine. We're going to sew the top 3 squares together we'll sew the middle 3 squares together, and we'll sew the bottom 3 squares together. So now we have our strips of fabric and they're ready to be pressed flat. So we're going to take our top and our bottom pieces and we're going to press them towards the middle. So to do this, just grab your strip, lay them flat like this, and then fold it up and press. Fold it up and press, and then the seam will be towards the middle. And then we'll just do the same thing on this side. We'll just take our fabric, lay it down, open it up, and press. And then you can see that the fabric is sewn or pressed towards the middle. And then for our middle square, we're just going to, let's see, it goes this way. We're going to press them towards the outer edges. Okay, so we have our strips of fabric. We have the top and the bottom pressed towards the middle. And then the middle strip, they're pressed towards the outside. And we do this so that when we sew these all together, the seams will nest. So if you can see, we're going to line up our seams. And you can see that this one points towards the right and this one points towards the left, and so we'll just butt those up against each other and then they'll just line up perfectly and we'll have perfect seams. You can tell in here the points just match up super well when you use this method. So we'll just go over to the sewing machine and we'll sew these together. Okay, so here we have our little body of our acorn, and we will just press these flat. Okay, so we were going to be making the cap for our acorn now. So grab your strip of fabric that's 2.5 by 9.5, and then grab 2 of your 2 squares that are 2.5 inches square. And then I'm just going to use my cutting mat here to line up to know where to draw my little line to sew on. So what I want is I want to draw a measure from the top corner to 1.5 inches. So I'm just going to grab my ruler and I will line it up so that the top corner or the top part is along the 1.5 inch marking right here. And then the bottom is going to be in the corner. And then I'll just draw a line just like that. So this is for the right side of the acorn. And then we will do the same thing, but we're going to be measuring from the left side this time. So I'm just going to line it up with this 3-inch line, and then I will go again to the 1.5 inch line, which and then to the corner on the left side this time. And we'll just draw a line from the corner up to that 1.5 inch line, and this will be our left side of our little acorn cap. Now we'll just take this over to the sewing machine. We're going to line this up along the edge on both sides, and then we'll just sew along this line. Okay, so here is our fabric. We're just going to take our ruler. We'll line up that 1/4 inch line along the edge with the seam, and we will just trim off the excess. So just make sure you're trimming off the small corner side, not the big strip side. Okay, so next we're going to press this open. We're just going to go like this, and you can see it looks a little wonky and weird, and that's fine. That's what it's supposed to be. So we'll just press those open just like that. Okay, so then we are going to take our ruler. We will line up the edge with the top edge, and we'll line up this side with the point of the fabric. Just like this. Hold it down firmly, and we will just trim off those extra pieces. Just like that. So we'll do the same thing on the other side. We'll just line up this edge with the top, and then the point along this side, just like this. Make sure it's straight. And then we'll just trim off this side, and then this side just like that. And then we have our rectangle, and those weird wonky pieces are gone now. Okay, so we have the body of our acorn all made, and we have our cap made. So we'll just need to add our stem. So to do that, we will just take our 2 strips of fabric and put the stem piece in the middle. We'll just take those over to the sewing machine, and we'll sew this row together. While we're over there, we will take our 2 other strips of fabric. These are the 2 by 6.5 ones. We will sew those to the edges of this block. All right, so we've got these sewn together, and lastly we'll just take them over to the sewing machine. Always with right sides together. We'll sew that to that one, then we'll sew this to this one, and our block will be complete. Okay, so there you have our acorn quilt block. I've just sewed them together and pressed it flat. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you're into fall quilt blocks, you can also go watch my pumpkin quilt block tutorials. I have this one that's just a 9-patch pumpkin, and this cute striped pumpkin quilt block. I also, coming up, I'm going to be doing a leaf quilt block, so be sure to check that out as well.